Welcome, viewers. Today, we're going to discuss the fact that the Israelis killed five more journalists from Al Jazeera news reporting. They killed them shortly after the last report was filed. They were in it, working out of a tent at the gates of a hospital when they were struck by an Israeli an assassination, essentially. Israel has made a habit of killing journalists throughout this entire conflict. It's intentional, it's a criminal act, and it's a war crime.
And
And
didn't
what,
they claim that the journalists were part of Hamas too?
of course,
I,
of course they
geez,
did.
what
That's
bunch
of
of
course they do. Of course they do.
losers.
They always do, right? It's not bad enough that the jargon, the propaganda jargon that we get is so bent out of shape. You know, when a group of Israelis go over and occupy land by force with the help of the army in Gaza and set up, housing. It's called basically a homestead, a homeland. When when they Palestinians were displaced, they live in refugee camps.
Yeah, it's
So so
pathetic.
it yeah, it's pathetic, but it shows you what the object here. The object is not to show the world what is happening, to silence the voices and to do what they're going to do. And they want the land. They don't want the people. They're going to kill them all and turn the land to rubble.
But isn't
So
that Netanyahu acted and came forward saying we're going to go in with all the military at the same time as Trump announced that he's going to meet Putin on U.S. soil and divvy up the Ukraine spoils of war? That seemed to be the catalyst for Netanyahu to make this grandiose move in the shadow of the limelight of Trump and Putin. And it seems to be a planned execution of genocide to do a clearing action so that Trump gets his beachfront property resorts for the wealthy in Gaza. And that was Netanyahu sending a message that he's on side with Trump and Putin to do whatever divvying of Ukrainian lands that they want. And why the hell is Israelis not being sanctioned by the world? Why hasn't Canada stopped any transactions with the Israelis? Have we booted the Israeli consulate out of Canada? That should be the first thing to go. Are you aware of any consulates being shut down in Canada or
of
any other
course,
countries in the
of,
world?
of course not. Like there is well, I don't know about other countries, but the Canadians have sat on their hands and gone, "Oh, woe, it's me! If we say anything, we're going to disrupt the peace talks." What a load of bull. And the Conservative Party is the worst. They might as well just come out and say
Yeah.
we condone genocide. As conservatives, we believe the land belongs to Israel. It was given to them by the man in the sky, and
Napoleon
4,000
definitely
years.
backs them.
After 4,000 years, they're finally getting to collect it. Like
Yeah.
it's insane, and it's unfortunate that Canada, our politicians don't have a spine. They're afraid of the Jewish lobby. They're afraid of being called anti-Semitic, and there's a lot of Jews that are appalled by what the Israelis are doing. It's
Yeah,
it's
there
it's
was some riots in the streets by the Israelis saying they don't, Netanyahu, you don't represent us. But this is genocide. I mean, the world has to say, hey, just because Trump is in support of it or the U.S. is in support of it, doesn't mean that they shouldn't be sanctioned as well as the Israelis. You cannot go around the world being a bully and committing genocide and aiding and abetting genocide. That has to stop. And it's just a disease in the minds of people not to stand up against genocide. We are supposed to be an educated world, high tech, everything else, and here we're resorting to elimination of people for the sake of profit and greed that lived in an open concentration camp to begin with. And Trump sees it as an opportunity for a huge real estate development for him and his wealthy buddies in the Middle East to take advantage of wiping out a whole race of people and clearing a land for such development. That is so leveled in Gaza, no human being could live there. So they're forcing these people to make a choice, live in squalor or move out of the country and go wherever you want, or we'll just help you along the way. We'll just execute you where you stand. And that's appalling, folks. Why aren't we standing up and saying no more?
I don't know. I think when the American news reporter was shot in the head, assassinated essentially, and the Israelis announced that they were just returning fire, that they were under sniper fire, which was just an absolute lie. And the
Yeah.
Americans did nothing, which is go ahead, do whatever you want, kill our own people, even if they're news people. When I watched the news this morning, I watched for some time before I get bored CNN. And CNN, the big story there is Trump's going to send the military into Washington, D.C. in order to move the homeless out. Now, the the distraction obviously is there. Everybody's up in arms about how these people are going to be moved out not by a police force necessarily, but by the military possibly. And it nobody is paying any attention to the fact that 5 journalists were intentionally targeted with a drone for
Yes.
reporting the news.
Yeah,
It's selective. It's selective propaganda. Like who cares?
But did
Trump's
you see
moving.
pictures of those airdrops of food, making people have to scramble to try to collect food like they were rats in a trap? Like the pictures are appalling that these people are having to race to wherever there's an airdrop and scavenge off the ground bits of food to survive. Why on earth would we allow that to happen in any area of the world? That is, especially when it's starvation and genocide. The whatever trucks should be allowed to pull in and make sure that people get the food and not having the people lined up and shot or groveling to get the food to prevent starvation. Some of those pictures show how unreligious those morals, values, and ethics are of the Israelis to force people to grovel for food and fight over food being airdropped in when they could implement a very easy method. The international community would love to disperse the food so everybody has a chance to get equal amounts of food. And the Israelis do not want that to happen. They want the chaos, the groveling for food, the fighting for food to make these people look like rats in the trap that the Israelis have for them. And that's appalling. I never seen such belittlement of people in my life other than maybe the concentration camps in Nazi Germany. And you should be ashamed, Israeli. Israel should be ashamed. You should not allow Netanyahu to do that to any people. History shows it does not favor those that do concentration camps and belittling of people in a genocide.
If you look back in history, one of the worst instances was the Warsaw Ghetto, where 460,000 Jews were imprisoned behind walls and barbed wire in an area 3.4 kilometers square. Now, anybody who looks at some of those pictures will immediately see that it's very similar to what's going on in Gaza.
Absolutely.
The difference is, of course, that the people who were behind the walls in 1943, 1940 were Jewish. The people that have built the walls and destroyed Gaza are now the perpetrators of that crime. And to have that sort of thing within really living memory, not to be able to look back and say, this happened to us and we didn't like it, but we can do it to somebody else because God wills it. It's insane. Absolutely
Religious
insane.
fanatics, and that, I guess, sums it up.
Yeah.
Religious zealots have pushed Trump into power in the U.S. They've empowered Netanyahu to commit genocide. The world has gone to hell in a handbasket, and the world has to reevaluate why we're not doing sanctions and opposing these type of ludicrous behaviors that are hurting humanity, and history will not reflect well on this time in our non-action for genocide in the Middle East and Gaza.
You know,
I'm
if you live
ashamed of my government, period, on not
if you
handling it.
lived in Canada in the 1940s, it's quite possible the average citizen, and I think most likely probable, the average citizen didn't know about concentration camps, didn't know about death camps. But
Probably not.
today, they're trying to stop you from knowing by killing journalists. They don't
Exactly,
want you. They
suppressing the media.
Yeah, so Gaza was a concentration camp. It is now turned into a death camp. Killing of journalists just highlights the fact that somebody has to do something. Now in Norway,
Is the world going to enforce convictions of war crimes?
they're not members of the court. The U.S. isn't a member, and Israel's not a member. Go figure. But at least Norway, which has the largest wealth fund in the world, has cut off, divested itself from 11 Israeli companies just recently. In other words, they're saying we don't want to invest in Israel or its companies because of the criminal activity going on there. But that's not exactly sanctions on a country level, where
No.
Canada is saying, we're imposing sanctions and trade restrictions and travel restrictions to Israel.
And that should happen. I mean, it's weak government will not stand up to oppressive regimes. And we need to stand our ground. And even if that means opposing Trump's backing of the Israeli government and actions. And Canada needs to realize that we are Canadian and we should maybe be taking a stance on international matters. We used to be a very powerful peacekeeping nation, and we should be influencing our position by saying that enough is enough. We're sending in our peacekeepers, whether the Israelis like it or not. And if they shoot on
You
us,
can't.
let's
They would.
declare war on them, I guess.
They'd shoot your plane down as it was coming in, or your boat as it was arriving. No, there's
Well, you
what.
have to take a stand. I mean,
No, but the first stage is sanctions them.
yeah.
And when Canada announced that it was going to recognize Palestine at the next general meeting of the UN, that's when the Americans added another 10% tariff, which is really a sanction, like you were saying earlier.
Yeah, it's a sanction, and they don't want us to oppose the land deal that Trump and Netanyahu have for confiscating Gaza Strip for the wealthy to have a play resort. And that goes to show you how powerful the oligarchs and the capitalists are at manipulating governments around the world. There is no such thing as democratic government in the world that is not influenced and controlled by money. Look at Elon Musk buying the government in support of Trump to get elected. Money buys politicians nowadays, and I think that's the bottom line, is that has to change. And that has to change by meaningful implementation of laws to actually be a democratic government, because all we are is a pseudo-democracy. The U.S. is not even a pseudo-democracy, it's a republic. And we need to reevaluate how we want to be run as a democratic democracy if we're ever going to be a democracy or true democracy. So I don't know, is there much more we can talk about this? I'm sure we'll have more hot takes on the matter. It's always changing and getting worse.
Well, something has to be done before it even gets worse. And right now Netanyahu's talking about in occupying Gaza. In other words,
Yeah.
they haven't done enough. They've destroyed everything. Now they're going to occupy it. I don't know what the difference is once you bulldozed it all. Does that mean you occupy it and whoever was there before no longer occupies it?
Well, that's what
And
Trump wants. So yeah,
you're going to
that's going to happen. You're
push
pushed
these,
out.
yeah, push them out to the desert. Like
And
it's
then
in,
and then occupying means that you're moving your prison guards in, and everybody's got curfews, and you'll do this and do that, and they'll push them into concentration camp areas, and you either move out of the country and vacate the lands, or we're going to continue starving and making your life a living hell that makes you wish you'd left the area. And that's the clearing effort for the Trump resort. Make no mistake, people. There's a plan for redevelopment, and it's for the wealthy to redevelop the Gaza. And they don't even want the poor to be their working staff. They want them the heck out of there so that only the people they want are in play for these resorts. Why would that happen? And couldn't Gaza self-govern and build resorts and bring in revenue from these wealthy people? They could if they were allowed to set up their own state and their own government, and the Israelis get the hell out. So we've got some real issues there.
the other thing too, which is telling, is it's basically illegal to protest in favor of Palestine. In
Yeah,
Britain, they label you a terrorist. You face years in jail.
jail,
Not
yeah.
necessarily going to happen, but they're picking people up off the street now. Britain at one time was noted, basically around the world, or at least the propaganda was, that it had a stable judiciary that was equitable, fair, and unprejudiced. But what's happened now is the courts are supporting the fact that these people are being banned from expressing their views in support of the Palestinians. It's not anti-Semitic; it's pro-Israel. In other words, they can't be; those two issues should be unlinked. You can't say that, like, I can support Israel, but I can be
Well,
against
we'd be
genocide.
charged with this podcast. If we were in Britain, we'd probably be charged for saying, "Hey, this is genocide." So, I mean, do we have targets on our back now by saying, "Hey, this is unacceptable behavior"? And we're not journalists per se, but we are a news expression of some sort as a podcast. So now we would probably face some backlash in many countries. We maybe even face backlash in Canada. I have no idea.
But here's an example in England. The Parliament passed a bill banning a group called Palestinian Action, criminalizing its public support. Now they have a picture on the CBC, which is surprising because the CBC, I guess, was a little late to this genocide story. But it shows police officers arresting an 89-year-old woman.
I think I remember seeing that going, wow.
89 years old, and what are they
Well, they
doing?
could come for us. I mean, we've vocally said it's genocide. So now, do we have targets on us? Are we going to be prosecuted by the wealthy
No,
influencing
we're not,
politicians?
we're
It's a
not that important.
possibility even in Canada.
Not that important. But the thing is, they've arrested over 200 people the day before yesterday.
Well,
Like it at least the people in Britain are standing up and making their voices heard. It's a start, but when does the government start to listen?
yeah, when the governments are backed by money and money rules who says what, you're probably only going to get what the wealthy want, and the wealthy want that resort in Gaza and keeping Trump happy, and they're bending over backwards to make Trump happy to get his Gaza wealth resort, and that seems to be the agenda of Netanyahu, the agenda of the wealthy oligarchs, and the agenda of even Putin with his oligarchs wanting to have these resort places. And that's probably going on, that these rich people are trying to divvy up areas of the world and conflicts by supporting one another. We got lots of issues that we'll never know, but history will reveal them to us.
For people who don't know, the reason the Palestine Action Group was declared a terrorist organization, and anybody carrying a placard the day before yesterday is causing a terrorist act, is because somebody sneaked onto a British airbase and spray painted
Wow,
one of the
that's real
planes.
terrorism. That's
Well,
real
they
terrorism. Spray cans.
well, I
Jeez.
think more than anything, it's an embarrassment. Like, how can
Your
somebody?
security that lax in
Yeah,
a time
yeah,
when people blow planes out of the air? Like, come
yeah,
on.
yeah.
That
So,
says
so
more about the incompetency of the airport than it is about somebody carrying a spray can of paint and harming nothing other than, you got to go remove the paint and repaint your engine. Big deal. Like, what a
well,
joke.
well, one of the quotes was, once the meaning of terrorism is separated from campaigns of violence against civilian populations and extended to include those causing economic damage or embarrassment to the rich and the powerful and the criminal, then the right to freedom of expression has no meaning and democracy is dead. That was from Defend Our Juries on its website. Now, that is a valid statement. Like, how
Yeah,
can you
that sums
say,
it up.
yeah, it's not terrorism? You're just
No.
embarrassed.
Yeah. So I guess on that note, we should say don't be embarrassed to stand up against genocide.
And don't be afraid or embarrassed that have your vote heard, your voice heard. Uh, Call your member of parliament. Let them know. Write letters to your editor. Let them know that your opinions differ from those being expressed in your newspapers and on your TV.
And
Let the
write
prime.
comments in our podcast so we can try to continue the conversation. So make sure you subscribe. It's free to subscribe. Make sure you comment, hit like, and tell us of other topics that you think we should discuss, or whether we're right or wrong on our assessment of the facts or information we have gathered. Okay, take care.
Bye.
Subscribe to the channel, give us a like, and please share the video. Don't be afraid to share this commercial with your friends too.